They took everything from her freedom, her reputation, even her future. But they couldn't take Max, her loyal German shepherd, who would stop at nothing to prove she was innocent. Do you have someone who would stand by you no matter what? If you do, tell us in the comments. Because this is a story about that kind of bond. A story of pain, a story of betrayal, and a dog who risked everything just to bring the truth to light. Get ready. This isn't just a story. It's a fight for justice. And it starts now. The courtroom buzzed under the cold glow of fluorescent lights, casting a harsh, sterile light on everything. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut through with a knife. Lena Carter sat in the defendant's chair, her back straight but her shoulders weighed down by the mounting pressure of the moment. Her hands, once steady and confident on the job, now trembled slightly in her lap as she tried to block out the accusations that were closing in on her. The walls of the courtroom seemed to close in as the trial unfolded like an unavoidable storm. She had been a police officer, once proud of the badge that now felt like an iron shackle. The evidence against her was undeniable, or so it seemed. Security footage placed her at the scene of the crime. Her fingerprints were found on the murder weapon, a handgun that had been used to take Daniel Hart's life. A witness, a neighbor, swore they saw her near Daniel's apartment the night he was killed. No one seemed to doubt it, least of all the jury. The evidence was perfect, and it made Lena feel like a cornered animal, caught in a web of lies and deceit she couldn't escape from. But there was one thing Lena knew for sure. She was innocent. The truth was buried deep under the weight of manipulation, and no matter how much she tried to scream it, the world refused to listen. This trial wasn't about truth. It was about winning, about securing a conviction. The system that she had once sworn to protect was now the very thing trying to destroy her. Inspector Marcus Boone, the lead prosecutor, stood confidently beside the judge's bench, his cold eyes scanning the room. His expression was a mask of indifference as he addressed the media, telling them that the case was airtight. To him, this was a victory in the making. He spoke of the evidence as though it were a guarantee: security footage, forensics, and witnesses. Everything fit perfectly into the narrative they had created. But Lena knew it wasn't true. She knew someone had framed her, and she knew exactly why. It was a setup, a carefully orchestrated plan that placed her in the wrong place at the wrong time, with no one to vouch for her and no way to prove her innocence. Every piece of the puzzle was designed to make her look guilty. The trial had moved too quickly, like a train barreling down the tracks, and it was clear to Lena that this was no accident. The system had failed her. Her career was over, and if she couldn't prove she was innocent, her life would be too. Among the sea of faces in the courtroom, one stood out. Ryan Foster. He was Lena's old partner, someone who had been through the thick of it all with her. They had shared countless hours on the job, built a bond of trust that was supposed to last a lifetime. But now he sat quietly in the back of the room, his eyes never leaving Lena. His silence spoke volumes. He didn't believe the accusations. He didn't believe she was capable of murder. But in a system as broken as this one, his belief didn't matter. No one else would listen to him. Suddenly, a loud bark echoed through the room, jolting everyone in their seats. The sound was filled with desperation, raw emotion, and loyalty, an unmistakable call for attention. All eyes turned to the source of the noise. There, being dragged out by an officer, was Max, Lena's faithful German shepherd. His powerful frame struggled against the officer's hold, his paws scraping against the floor, his eyes locked onto Lena's with an intensity that made her heart ache. Max wasn't just any dog. He had been her partner, her protector, through thick and thin. He had been there for her in moments of joy and in moments of despair. But now here he was, being dragged away as if he were just another piece of evidence to be discarded. Max wasn't going to let her go without a fight. His growls filled the courtroom, and despite the officer's attempts to control him, the dog fought with everything he had. His loyalty was unwavering. The bond between them was unbreakable, forged through years of working together. Lena had always trusted Max, and she knew deep down that Max trusted her the same way. He could sense the injustice of the situation, and he wasn't going to let it stand. He wasn't going to let her be silenced, not when the truth was out there, hidden just beneath the surface. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't afraid of death, not really. She had faced danger countless times before, but this time, it wasn't death she feared. It was the thought that the truth might die with her, that Max's loyalty, the one thing that had never wavered, might not be enough to expose the lies and corruption that had put her here. She had no way of proving her innocence. The world had turned its back on her. But Max, her dog, her partner, he was still by her side. And in that moment, Lena knew that he was the only one who could save her. After the trial, Max was sent to a new K-9 unit. The decision to separate him from Lena was made quickly. As a trained police dog, his future would be with another officer, working cases just as he had with Lena. But no one expected the toll it would take on him. Max, once a fiercely loyal and obedient dog, was no longer the same. He ignored commands, his body still and unyielding, when his new handler called him. Meals were left untouched, his food bowl sitting idle, the food growing stale. And every night Max would sit by the door, his eyes fixed on the exit, waiting for Lena, as if he believed she would come walking through at any moment to reclaim him. But she never did. His new handler tried everything: treats, praise, new toys, but nothing could reach him. Max was lost, his spirit broken. He seemed to have given up on life itself, and the once energetic German shepherd was now a hollow shell of the dog who had once been Lena's partner, her protector. Ryan Foster, Lena's old partner, had been following the trial from a distance. He never believed Lena was guilty, not for a second. He had known her too well. The idea that she could have murdered anyone, let alone Daniel Hart, was absurd. But Ryan was a man of few words, and he kept his doubts to himself, watching as the trial progressed, feeling powerless as the life of the woman he had once trusted so completely unraveled. When Ryan heard about Max's condition, he knew something had to be done. He couldn't stand to see the dog that had once been so full of life withering away, still waiting for Lena, who was now locked away, serving time for a crime she hadn't committed. Ryan had always known that Max and Lena shared a special bond, one that went beyond just being a handler and a working dog. There was a deep connection between them, a shared history that couldn't be replaced. Without a second thought, Ryan adopted Max, hoping that by giving the dog a new home, he could provide the comfort Max so desperately needed. But when Max first came to Ryan's house, he was distant, cold even. He would lie in the corner of the room, his eyes staring vacantly at the wall. The spark that once shone in his eyes was gone, replaced with an emptiness that made Ryan's heart ache. Max didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be anywhere but with Lena. Ryan was patient, letting Max adjust in his own time. He didn't rush him, didn't force the dog to be anything he wasn't ready to be. Over the course of a few weeks, Ryan and Max grew closer. It was a slow process, but there were small moments, like when Max would lean against Ryan's leg for comfort, or when he would wag his tail slightly when Ryan gave him a treat. But the breakthrough came one night, when Ryan said Lena's name, more out of habit than expectation. "Lena," Ryan muttered softly, as if to himself. Max's ears perked up. His head snapped toward Ryan, his eyes wide and alert. The dog whined, a low, mournful sound, as he scratched at the door with his paws, desperately trying to reach something or someone on the other side. Ryan froze, his heart racing as he watched the dog's strange reaction. "What's wrong, buddy?" he whispered. Max continued to claw at the door, his body tense, his breathing heavy and uneven. It was as if he knew something that Ryan didn't, something that the world had missed. Ryan opened the door, half expecting Max to dart outside, but the dog stayed still, his eyes fixed on the ground just beyond the threshold. Ryan stood there for a moment, confused, unsure of what was happening. Then, without a second thought, Max turned and began to walk briskly away, his body taut with purpose. Ryan followed him, unable to ignore the sense that something was wrong, something important was about to happen. Max led him through the streets, his movements quick and purposeful, until they reached a narrow alleyway near the scene of Daniel Hart's murder. Ryan's heart skipped a beat as he realized where they were. He had been to this alley before during the investigation, when Lena had been framed for the crime. But there had been no evidence to suggest that anything could have been found here. Max stopped suddenly, his nose close to the ground. He began to dig, his paws working furiously at the dirt and debris. Ryan stood frozen, unsure of what to do. It wasn't like Max to act like this. He had always been a well-trained dog, following orders without hesitation. But now he was acting on instinct, guided by something deeper, something that Ryan couldn't yet understand. The sound of digging was sharp in the quiet of the night, and after a few moments, Max's paws hit something solid. He stopped panting, his body still tense as he scratched the ground around the object. Ryan knelt down beside him and carefully brushed away the dirt, his fingers trembling as they uncovered a strange, smooth piece of fake skin, like a mask. The skin was lifelike, crafted with an eerie level of detail. It was almost perfect. Ryan's stomach dropped as the realization hit him. Someone had framed Lena. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was deliberate. The piece of fake skin had been planted here, in the very alley where Daniel Hart had been killed, to point the blame at Lena. The evidence had been fabricated, and Lena had been the pawn in a twisted game. Max had led Ryan here, and in doing so, he had uncovered the truth. Ryan and his journalist friend Ethan Cole were determined to find the truth. After their discovery in the alley, they couldn't just let it go. Max had led them to the fake mask, and now they needed to understand who was behind the conspiracy to frame Lena. The more they dug, the darker the trail became. Ethan was a seasoned investigative journalist who had a nose for trouble. And when Ryan filled him in on the strange discovery, Ethan didn't hesitate. They spent hours in Ryan's dimly lit apartment, sifting through old files, reports, and anything that might offer a lead. They came across references to a covert group called Black Viper, a name that sent a chill down Ryan's spine. As the pieces began to fall into place, the picture grew more disturbing. Black Viper wasn't just some shadowy criminal network. It was a highly organized professional group of killers, specializing in high-profile assassinations. Their trademark was the use of sophisticated high-tech masks that allowed them to impersonate anyone they chose. They could disguise their faces to blend into any crowd, commit any crime, and then vanish without a trace. The masks were almost indistinguishable from real human skin, and they had been used in a number of unsolved murders over the years. But the truly terrifying part? The group wasn't just targeting politicians or criminals. They were framing innocent people to take the fall for their killings. Ryan felt a growing sense of dread as they dug deeper into the Black Viper files. There were connections everywhere: businessmen, law enforcement, politicians. And at the very top of the list, Ryan found two names that made his blood run cold: Richard Vance and Marcus Boone. Richard Vance was a powerful businessman with ties to several major corporations. He had made a fortune in the private security industry, and his name was synonymous with influence and power. But what Ryan uncovered about him was even more chilling. Vance was linked to Black Viper, using the group to eliminate rivals and cover up his illegal dealings. He was ruthless and would stop at nothing to protect his empire. And then there was Marcus Boone, the prosecutor who had led Lena's trial. Boone had been the one to ensure that Lena was convicted, making her case airtight with fabricated evidence. But Ryan now realized that Boone wasn't just doing his job. He was part of something much darker. He had helped set up Lena to cover up the crimes of Black Viper and protect the real killers. The more Ryan uncovered, the clearer it became. Lena had been nothing more than a pawn in their game. While Ryan and Ethan continued their investigation, Lena's situation in prison was growing more dire. Word had gotten out that Lena was a threat to those in power. The deeper she dug for her own innocence, the more dangerous it became. She wasn't just fighting for her freedom, she was fighting for her life. In prison, Lena survived a near-fatal assassination attempt. She had been eating her lunch when another inmate, someone she had once trusted, slid a poisoned meal onto her tray. The poison was slow-acting, meant to kill her without leaving a trace. The inmate's eyes were cold as she watched Lena take a bite. But Lena's instincts kicked in. She had learned the hard way how to survive in the harsh environment of prison. She immediately spit out the food, realizing what had happened just in time. The guards were called, and Lena was rushed to the infirmary. Though she survived the poisoning, Lena knew this was just the beginning. They wanted her dead, before she could expose the truth. She had become a liability to the people who had framed her, and they were willing to do anything to silence her for good. Back in the outside world, Ryan and Ethan's investigation had taken them to a hidden warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was a large, nondescript building tucked away in a forgotten part of town. Inside, they found something that turned their stomachs. Rows upon rows of lifelike masks, each one more terrifying than the last. The masks were made from the same material as the one Max had found, and as Ryan scanned the shelves, his heart skipped a beat. Among the masks, there was one that was unmistakably familiar. It was a mask of Ryan's face. His own features were perfectly replicated, right down to the scar above his left eyebrow. The realization hit him hard. Black Viper had been planning to frame him next. They had already used their masks to frame Lena, and now they were coming for him. They had the means to erase his identity, turn him into a ghost, and leave him as a scapegoat for their crimes. As the full weight of the conspiracy settled on his shoulders, Ryan knew the stakes had never been higher. Max had led him here, guiding him toward the truth, but now the danger was real. Ryan wasn't just trying to clear Lena's name, he was trying to stay alive. Max sniffed around the warehouse, his nose working overtime. Ryan could see the dog's anxiety, the tension in his body. There was more to uncover, and Max could feel it. As Ryan looked around at the array of masks, a sense of urgency overwhelmed him. The web was closing in around them, and soon there would be no escape. They had uncovered the dark heart of Black Viper, but now the group knew they were onto them. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. Ryan and Max had to move fast before they became the next targets. Black Viper had seen the investigation closing in on them. They had done everything in their power to cover their tracks, but now Ryan and Max were a threat they couldn't ignore. In the dead of night, Ryan's phone buzzed with a warning from Ethan. Assassins were on their way. The Black Viper network had mobilized. Ryan's heart sank. He wasn't ready for a fight, but there was no choice. The attack came without warning. Ryan was driving through the city streets, Max in the passenger seat, when a black SUV appeared in his rearview mirror. Before he could react, the car swerved and cut him off, forcing him to slam on the brakes. Bullets began to rain down, smashing through the windshield as Ryan swerved to avoid the gunfire. The thud of the bullets hitting metal echoed in his ears and his pulse raced. He gripped the steering wheel, trying to stay focused as his car zigzagged down the road. "Get down!" Ryan shouted, but Max was already on alert. The loyal German shepherd jumped from the seat and lunged at the attackers. His teeth sunk into the arm of one assassin who was leaning out the window, aiming his gun. Max's bite was savage, pulling the man back into the car with a growl of fury. Ryan didn't hesitate. He floored the gas pedal, trying to shake off the black SUV, but another vehicle emerged, blocking his path. The chase had turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse. Ryan was outnumbered, and it was clear that they weren't just trying to kill him. They were trying to stop the truth from coming to light. But Max wasn't about to let that happen. As Ryan swerved, trying to lose them, another shot rang out, hitting Max in the shoulder. Max yelped in pain, his body jerking from the impact. Ryan's heart sank. He had to get Max out of there. Without thinking, he steered the car into an alley, cutting the engine. The black SUVs skidded past them, and for a moment the street was silent, except for Max's labored breathing. "Hang in there, boy," Ryan murmured, his voice cracking as he reached over and gently stroked Max's fur. Blood seeped through the dog's coat, and Ryan's heart twisted. The bullet wound was bad. Max had been hit directly in the shoulder, and the bleeding wasn't stopping. Ryan knew they couldn't waste time. With the attackers still on their tail, he scooped Max up and rushed to the closest vet clinic, praying they would make it in time. The vet worked quickly, stitching up the wound and giving Max fluids to stabilize him. It was a long few hours of waiting, but finally the vet assured Ryan that Max would survive. The loyal dog had fought through worse before, and this wasn't the end of his story. But as Ryan sat in the clinic waiting room, his phone buzzed again. This time, the news wasn't good. Lena's execution date had been moved up. The people behind this conspiracy had decided that if they couldn't silence her with poison, they would end her life another way. Time was running out. With a determined look in his eyes, Ryan stood up, looking down at Max, who was resting, still groggy from the sedation. "We're not done yet," he muttered under his breath. Ryan and Ethan quickly formulated a plan. They had one chance to get to Lena before it was too late. They stormed the prison where Lena was secretly being held. The authorities had kept her in a facility so hidden that no one even knew she was still alive. But with Max's help, they knew exactly where to go. The dog's nose led them through the labyrinth of corridors, down forgotten hallways, until they finally arrived at the cell where Lena was being kept. Max's eyes were wide with intensity. The moment he caught her scent, he tugged at Ryan's side, his body rigid with urgency. Lena was just beyond that door, and Max was determined to make sure she made it out alive. But when they reached the final door, they found Marcus Boone waiting. He was standing next to Lena, his hand on the trigger of a gun aimed directly at her. The look in his eyes was cold, devoid of humanity. He had come to finish what Black Viper had started, to silence Lena once and for all. "You should have stayed out of this, Ryan," Boone sneered, his grip tightening around the gun. "But now it's too late." Ryan's heart raced as he took a step forward. "Let her go, Boone. You've already lost." Boone's laugh was low, dark, and filled with malice. "I don't think so." Before Ryan could make another move, Max sprang into action. The loyal German shepherd charged forward with a powerful growl, sinking his teeth into Marcus Boone's arm. Boone screamed in pain, dropping the gun as Max's powerful jaws gripped his sleeve. Ryan didn't waste a second. He lunged forward, knocking Boone to the ground with a forceful shove. Boone crumpled, dazed and vulnerable. Ryan quickly grabbed the gun, tossing it aside. Max backed away, his fur matted with Boone's blood, but his eyes still fierce. In that moment, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had arrived, alerted by Ethan, who had called for backup as soon as they reached the prison. Officers rushed into the room and quickly restrained Boone. They arrested him, and Lena was freed. But the victory didn't end there. As the officers took Boone away, Ryan realized that the fight wasn't over yet. Richard Vance was still out there. His involvement in the conspiracy was still unproven, but Ryan was determined to bring him down. The Black Viper network was a shadowy, dangerous beast, and this was only the beginning of their fight for justice. For now, though, Lena was safe. Max had saved the day once again, proving that the bond between a dog and his owner was unbreakable. And Ryan knew that no matter what, he wasn't going to stop until the truth came to light, until Black Viper was exposed for the corrupt, dangerous organization it was. With the evidence Ryan and Max uncovered, the tides of justice began to turn in Lena's favor. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the truth came to light. Lena, once imprisoned and labeled a murderer, was now being exonerated, her name cleared. Black Viper's network of corruption had been exposed, and the conspirators, Marcus Boone, Richard Vance, and their associates, were being taken down one by one. Ryan and Max were hailed as heroes. Their dedication and unyielding pursuit of the truth had saved Lena's life and dismantled one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. Max, the loyal German shepherd who had risked his life to protect his owner and bring justice to light, became a symbol of bravery and loyalty. For Lena, the moment she had longed for had finally arrived. She was free. She was no longer a fugitive. The accusations had all been a twisted lie. The relief washed over her like a warm tide as she stood in front of a packed courtroom. The weight of years of falsehoods lifted from her shoulders. She had been through so much, endured so much pain, but now, with the truth finally in the open, she could begin again. The badge she had worn proudly as a police officer was not lost. It had simply been stolen by those who had wanted to silence her. Now, with the truth on her side, it would be returned to her. Lena's reinstatement to the police force was a moment of triumph. She walked into the station, greeted by applause and cheers from colleagues who had once doubted her. The look of pride in their eyes was everything she had longed for during those dark months behind bars. Ryan, too, had found a new sense of purpose. He had never expected to be at the forefront of such an incredible journey, but now, with Lena cleared and justice finally served, he was appointed to lead a new investigative team focused on uncovering criminal networks like Black Viper. He was ready for the challenge. His team was built on the foundation of integrity, trust, and the pursuit of truth, values that had gotten him through this harrowing experience, and he owed it all to the dog who had never let him down. Max was the real hero of it all. The bond between him and Lena was undeniable, and the dog's unwavering loyalty had been the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. Max had saved Lena's life, helped expose Black Viper's operation, and protected Ryan when danger loomed. It was only fitting that the world recognized his bravery, and so a ceremony was organized to honor Max's heroism, a medal of bravery to be placed around his neck. The event was held in a grand hall, a place filled with people whose lives had been touched by Max's actions. Ryan stood by Lena's side as the medal was handed over. Max, though a dog, held himself proudly. His head was high, his chest puffed out with the pride of a true hero. The once weary dog now stood as the embodiment of courage and selflessness. Lena, her eyes glistening with tears of gratitude, knelt down to Max's level. She carefully placed the medal around his neck, her hands steady. As the shiny metal touched his fur, Max's tail started to wag. A soft bark echoed in the room. He licked Lena's hand in a display of affection, his eyes full of trust and love. It was as if he knew this moment was for him, his loyalty and bravery recognized, not just by those who had stood by him, but by the world. The applause filled the room, but all that mattered to Lena in that moment was the bond she shared with her loyal companion. Max had always been there for her, and now, as a symbol of triumph, he stood as her protector once more. She stroked his fur gently, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "We did it, boy," Lena whispered to him, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved me. You saved us." Ryan stood beside them, a hand on Max's back, his gaze soft as he looked at the dog who had become more than just a partner. Max was a brother, a friend, a true hero. He knew that without the dog's instincts, without his loyalty, none of this would have been possible. The ceremony ended with everyone filing out of the hall, but Lena, Ryan, and Max stayed behind for a moment. The three of them shared a quiet moment of peace. They had won, not just against Black Viper, but against a world that had tried to break them apart. Their bond was unshakable, and now, more than ever, they knew they could face anything together. For Lena, the future was once again bright. She was back on the force and ready to bring justice to those who needed it most. For Ryan, it was a new beginning, leading a team that would never lose sight of what mattered. And Max? Max was no longer just a K9. He was a symbol of everything that was good in the world. Together, they had proven that justice could be found, even in the darkest of times. They had fought, they had endured, and they had won. The story of Max's bravery, of Lena's resilience, and of Ryan's unwavering determination would go down in history